welcome to episode 12 of Painted Bread Quarterly Slush Pile. I'm always excited to do these, and today I'm extra excited because we have two fresh faces in our podcast with us today, and we're discussing fiction for part of the time. So I'm really excited about that as well. Fiction was my turn on in childhood. It's still probably my thing, and I'm really happy that we're going to discuss some stories today. So let's do what we do and start off by introducing people. I'm Kathleen Volkmiller. I'm director of the graduate program in publishing, co-editor of the Painted Bride Quarterly, and so happy to be here on episode 12. Tim Fitz is in the room with me.
Hi, I'm Tim Fitz, and I've been reading for the Painted Bride Quarterly for about 3 years now. I'm a fiction writer, and I teach first-year writing here at Drexel University, and I teach also in the liberal arts department at the Curtis Institute of Music.
Hi, I'm Caitlin McLaughlin. I am the Digital Communications Co-op for PBQ. This is about my 6-month reading with PBQ. I was an intern before I was a co-op.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Denise Guerin, and I'm a photographer and have been on the PBQ editorial staff for a while now. And this is my first podcast. I'm a podcast virgin today.
Yeah, super, super exciting. And we only have one remote person, which I think is the first time we've done that either. Our remote person is Marion Wren.
Greetings from New York City. This is Marion, and I have been co-editing PBQ with Kathleen for many years. And I'm really excited to talk about fiction today, primarily because I run a series of book clubs. So I read popular fiction with popular audiences all the time. So I'm super excited to share what the editorial process is like for making decisions about fiction for literary magazines.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay, so normally this is the moment when I say you can find the poems that we're discussing on our podcast pages at pbq.drexel.edu. But today, since it is a story, I don't even remember the page count off the top of my head, but of course we're not going to read that out loud to you on air. So we're going to have the entire story available to you on the podcast pages. And I suggest that you go read it before you listen any further. Go ahead. Go now. We'll wait. We'll wait right here. So, since we are discussing fiction, we're only going to discuss one piece today while we see how this goes. And the story is Prufrock by Terry Dubow. You think they're reading?
I hope so.
They should. Okay.
Can we make the camera work like on their computers?
Can we reverse things? Okay, so hopefully you've read along because you've read it first because we're going to jump right into the conversation and there will be spoiler alerts. So you will hear the plot as we deconstruct it. So I think I'm going to start this like I do in my classroom. Like I allow the first response to be, "Did you like it?" So what do you guys think?
Yeah, every time I read a story, I'm almost always looking for an excuse to hate the story so I don't have to read it. And the first chance to put a story down, I do it, and I usually don't go back to the story for years. But when the raccoon was in the ceiling and coming down, I guess that just hit a note for me, being from Florida, where this type of stuff can happen any time, at any day, whether it's a coyote or a raccoon or an alligator or snakes or rats or birds. And so that's what so it forced me to confront, I guess, the physicality of the story, the nature of the story. So then I would, once I'm in, then I've stopped looking for that excuse. And then I'm like hoping that it keeps solid. So I got there pretty fast. So I liked it. I'm not sure about if I liked the ending, but I liked the read. The whole experience was very pleasurable.
So let me jump in on that too, Tim, because it's like, okay, so the title of the piece is called Prufrock, which conjures a whole bunch of stuff, right? So you're thinking T.S. Eliot, like what's the relationship with the poem? Like, it's a pretty bold maneuver for a title for a short story in a literary magazine, right? And then I think Dubow's first line had me paying attention. So the morning of the raccoons, I had the shower head set on a hard pounding staccato, has a lovely rhythm, right? Like it's just, I'm charmed by that sentence. And then, as you said, like these images of like raccoons falling out of the ceiling, like it is mildly horrifying and also potentially common. And maybe that's part of the horror of it, right? And then that whole thing becomes like the universe of this really painful, disintegrating and burgeoning marriage. And then you get this wackadoo ending that I really want to talk to you guys about. Like, what on earth happens at the end to Prufrock?
Yeah. Well, let's get there. It's funny, Mary, that you read that first line because I had that same idea. I was even thinking about reading the first paragraph. So,
Oh, do it.
okay. I think I'll do it.
Good.
The morning of the raccoons, I had the shower head set on a hard pounding staccato. I was staring straight into the water, counting the intervals between the spurts, thinking of how much I wanted to avoid the two people on the other side of the door. That's when I noticed that the ceiling above me was bouncing. Not a 2-year-old on the bed sort of bouncing, more like what I imagine the ocean looks like from below, slow and rhythmic. Without taking my eyes off the ceiling, I reached for the handle and turned off the shower. Now, if I were teaching this in a class, I would praise that first paragraph and point out why it works. And for me, it works, and I think it would work for most readers, because we have so much tension built up during this very simple act. A man is taking a shower. But we know it's the morning of the raccoons, right? And we know, like Marion just pointed out, that there's another plot line of tension in the family, right? I wanted to avoid the two people on the other side of the door. So there's two, finger crooks at us going, come on, right? And then the descriptions themselves are just so well written, that I'm definitely reading that next paragraph if I'm a reader, right?
Yeah, I feel like the last sentence, when you hear about people saying that song is about me, I feel like that last sentence hits that target audience for him. There's a sizable amount of I don't know how large of a part of the population that lives their life like that, where there's just something they suddenly have to deal with that's going to be horrifying. And but it's exactly how you feel. You don't take your eyes off the ceiling, and you just turn the shower off, and you're kind of hoping it's going to disappear, it's going to resolve itself magically, but it's not.
Yeah. Caitlin and Denise, what are your initial...
I was horrified in the very beginning. I mean, with the title Prufrock, I was kind of like Tim, looking for a reason to stop reading it. I thought maybe it's going to be cliche. We're going to go for the J. Alfred Prufrock thing going on. But, oh my gosh, the first page where it says, I saw a raccoon the size of a bear cub land in the tub, shake itself off and lift its head in my direction. That's horrifying. I couldn't get that image out of my head.
And it's actually also because it's so well drawn, right? You can see that raccoon, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Denise?
I love that image, too, without taking the eyes off the ceiling and being forced out the door. Being forced out. I can see him stepping slowly out of the shower. Horrified is a good... Mm-hmm. I don't know what they're slow and rhythmically doing up there. I was a little thrown with that. What are they doing?
I think even if they were pacing, right, it might, if they're just pacing, I imagine when raccoons come in your house, I'm sure Tim will correct me if I'm wrong, because he knows about all the wildlife in America. But
I thought it might be like a mother with babies. That's what I kind of came up with. This fat raccoon mother and her
when animals get in your house, they don't want to be in your house. They're trapped. And they, like, I know this for sure with squirrels, right? Uh-oh, Tim's making faces at me. I might be wrong. But I think when an animal...
they're very happy up there.
When an animal gets in your house,
Right
they
at
might have
home.
been...
They're uncomfortable with us being in there. That's for certain.
They might have been initially seeking shelter, but I think it's an alien environment for them, and they are a little wigged, you know, when they get in your house. I know that squirrels, when they get in, they want to get out immediately. They don't want to be there. So maybe, I don't know, I just pictured them pacing like anything that was trapped. You know?
It's funny. I thought the exact opposite. I'm in Tim's corner, where they have made
Yeah.
themselves at home in a place that allowed them to, and have now broken through that wall, and he is just not strong enough to deal with it.
I mean, there's a mirror story on the opposite side of this where the raccoon is talking about, I can't believe I moved into this place with people. How can I get rid of them? I've got to kill their cat,
Eat the couch.
and I'm going to lock the door.
Right. But okay, but the author, I like where Denise is going with this too. It's right, like it sort of becomes a way of thinking about that house too, right? Like these animals have the word later is like infested it, right? But it becomes a sort of like just metaphor for the disintegration of something, and also the fertility, right? Like I like this image of, like, you know, a raccoon family above the ceiling, right? Because this messed up family is both reproducing and eating itself alive, basically, right? So, yeah, I don't know. It's a dismaying story of a modern family, certainly.
Well, the SEALs too, with the image of our armed forces in other countries.
Yeah.
This is probably how there's some similarity of feeling for people in Iraq or Afghanistan having our presence there.
Right, and it's something we choose not to think about until it quite literally falls through our ceiling on top of us, you know. They have been not confronting all of these issues in the family, and then all of a sudden it's there. Yeah.
If there's one line, though, that I would love to cut, it will surprise no one who knows me that I opted for flight, because I knew that before that sentence was there. I mean, that's just a little clip, but that's one of the moments with,
You know what is what Tim brings up right now? Normally when we're discussing poetry, we can do a line-by-line thing where we say, I'm going to ask him to cut this line, or why did we go here? And this is an interesting experience right now to talk about fiction, because there's a line in the second paragraph that I would ask him to cut. And I've been debating since I read this. First off, do we get that specific on this podcast? You know, and I don't think we do. What do you guys think? Only because we're not reading along. Our readers have read it, but they could access it. They could have it in front of them while they listen, but they might read and then listen to the podcast.
Kathy, that's you and I were talking about this briefly before the podcast started, and that is like, do we owe it to the listening audience, right, to like provide some sort of like upfront summary of the piece, right? And you know, we can disagree about that, but I do think there's like before we start to take lines out, right, or edit or suggest edits, that the first move is really to represent the piece fairly, to render it, to talk like to what are the pieces, what's its drive, what are the characters, what's the move of it, so that we can all see it clearly, see what's working or not working, and then that second or third order of line edit comes into play, right?
Right. And I don't know if that comes into play during a podcast at all, is what I'm saying. That might be minutia. I think we should talk about it in a bigger way. But I didn't prepare a synopsis, so I'm not sure how to handle that.
I don't know that I'm asking for a synopsis necessarily. I think maybe I'm asking for like understandings of it, right? So, you know, I guess what for me, like my understanding of the piece is that it starts with a raccoon, right? That's the sort of like trigger for what becomes, a sad story of a family disintegrating that ends up with the return to this infested house to save a cat, and then that goes strangely.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know if we should get into that discussion yet, but you're right. Yep. So they go back to the house to rescue a cat. It goes strangely, and so that is a final. The final straw is such a stupid word to use, but like that is the thing that makes our protagonist realize it is over. He is not fixing this marriage,
Yeah.
and he has to get out of Dodge with his teen son.
Well, what did you guys make of the sort of middle of the piece where they've left the house, right? The wife has packed up their stuff in 30 seconds, right? And then they go to her parents' house. Like, what was your take on the middle of the story?
Well, and let's not forget the grocery store. The grocery
Right.
store in the mall was fascinating to me. I, for one, okay, so it starts with the shower and the raccoons infesting, and then he goes to work like a normal day because he guess he doesn't know what else to do, right? His wife completely gets, freaks out, panics, and takes off to her parents' house. But he goes to work, and his job is at a gourmet grocery store in a mall,
Right.
which I never even heard of such a thing. But I guess that's what they have in Cleveland. Maybe that's where our author's writing from. But I think he does say mall in Cleveland, doesn't he, when he names the grocery?
Yeah.
So I'm already. It is. McWilliams Emporium is a gourmet food store in the haughtiest mall in Cleveland. Right. We're going to make so many Cleveland jokes right now, don't we? Like, what does that mean if you're the haughtiest mall in Cleveland? But anyway, so, I, for one, was having empathy for this man. And then he goes to this job, which might not be the most rewarding or satisfying job. And then we get another layer that he's working for his in-laws.
I felt that the in-laws were the way in to sort of know Lauren.
Yeah.
Because we don't really know much about her. And we get her character, particularly through her father, I thought.
Right.
One of my favorite lines was, he has the way of smiling while hating you. He doesn't move his lower lip. It's very off-putting. And I had to make the face myself while I was reading it. And I had to look at myself. And it's like the worst smile. It is what you don't want to ever encounter that. And it just gave me such a clear picture of her father.
Yeah.
And isn't his hairpiece judgmental too? Wasn't there like
Yes. Yes. Everything about the man. It was really, I liked the picture that he drew.
And it's funny too, the couple, the mother-in-law and father-in-law, the mother-in-law just glares, doesn't say words, right? She doesn't even wave back when he comes in. Yeah. And then the father-in-law is kind of like up his grill in his face.
I mean, he's their raccoon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well said. But, I mean, that's it exactly too. Like before we get to this sort of like haughty mall, this quotidian, like desperate existence of his, right? He has left his wife and his son in the house with those raccoons and gone to work. Like that is so. That leap for me was really like, who is this guy? Like, who does that? Right?
Well, that's funny because I didn't. She was also out of Dodge in 15 seconds. I didn't see that he left her at the house with the raccoons. I thought they all skedaddled, and he went to work, and she went to mom's.
Yeah.
Because she's an excellent packer.
He packed up his stuff, and he didn't expect to see all of the stuff in this guest room at his in-laws' house, and that's where the penny drops that the marriage is over, right?
Right.
So
she was there longer, so that was our clue that he left before her.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he didn't really necessarily even tell her about the raccoons off the bat. I was wondering, why would you just not tell your family?
What did he say? He was fatigued?
Yeah, he said, what's with the chair's head? He didn't tell his son either, even though he was just playing video games, like nothing happened.
Yeah. You know what this just made me think of is twice we have people just staring into their own space to avoid making eye contact. That's what that moment is like too, isn't it? He gets dressed and goes to work. She strokes her Prufrock the cat for a while, and the kid is playing the video games. We don't know how fast. I just know that there is a line about how quickly she packed.
Yeah, the father says it, right? That she packed in 30 seconds.
And then he said she's
Right?
good at that or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
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 If I was teaching this story in the class, I would probably talk a lot about the exterminator. This guy's wonderful for me because he's outside of the situation, is so calm about it. Not an advised situation, amigo. When he talks about having the raccoon in the shower, the exterminator responds, "Not an advised situation, amigo." And he's so distant, and that for me, that's us, the reader, being able to look at this from a little bit of a distance, where it's his. I mean, we're so disinterested in people's problems unless it directly affects us. And I like that he keeps this guy in there for a little bit. Keeps a presence. For me, that really softens the hard edge of the whole raccoon, broken, saved marriage, all these issues, and gives us some distance and maybe pulls the rest of the story into relief in a way. Yeah, I'm in love with that. I mean, for me, that's brilliant. That's such a wonderful move for this writer to put that guy in there.
Jake the exterminator.
Yeah.
Well, on those lines too, like he's the one who says the line about "Let's see what Mother Nature has in store for us," right? I think that's his line, and for me, that sort of like chimes back to the moment in the in-laws' house where our speaker like the penny drops, right? Like where he realizes not only that the marriage is broken, but that his wife is pregnant, right? And like all that information sort of comes from the side a little bit. And that too is Mother Nature, right? There's like these inevitabilities and this wildness to this thing that's also like crushingly contained in this house, you know, this unhappy home.
Yeah.
There's a lot of masking going on. I noticed the author kept saying things like, "I appreciated it, I really did. Also, I resented the heck out of it." Like, and then he does that a few times. They were good people, but they were also terrible. So he keeps trying to mask his emotions, and that's kind of the whole theme of, pretending things aren't happening, staying in your own little bubble.
Yeah. Well, and at dinner, at the awkward time at the in-laws, where he's now discovered the boxes, it dawns on him that Lauren is actually leaving him. He goes in the bathroom mirror and gives himself a pep talk, almost militaristic pep talk, right? About, you get out there and you do whatever it takes. Right? And then when he gets out there, he's again rather ineffectual, and it takes him another minute, beat, to realize she's pregnant. Right.
I guess that goes with the whole, like, J. Alfred Prufrock theme, not actually doing anything, but constantly wanting to jump in and participate and take charge of the situation, but just kind of being an observer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So to keep on going with what literally happened, so he makes he makes the discovery that his wife is pregnant. They fight, even dropping the F-bomb at the dining room table with stoic mother-in-law who still hasn't said a damn word, right? And then Jeremy, the troubled teenage son, realizes that Prufrock the cat is missing. That she might have packed up that house in 30 seconds. She might have loved that cat so much, but she forgot the cat. So Jeremy goes on his first Navy SEAL mission with Dad to see if they can retrieve that cat. And this is not in there. This is me completely projecting. But I feel like our protagonist is hoping that if he gets Prufrock back, it'll be some saving grace, right? Something that Lauren will maybe not take him back with open arms, but it'll help his case if he can get that cat back, right? But when they get to the house, he's afraid to open the door. They make no plan. They have no weaponry, right? They just go to the house and then stand outside the door, and Dad is afraid to open the door. So I don't know what he was thinking, but Jeremy is seeing it like his video games, and he jumps right in. And now is the moment that Marion and I had a different. We did not discuss this, honest to God.
We did not.
No, we did not. But Marion sent me a text that said he killed the cat. Question mark, exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point. And I went, what? Because I hadn't read it that way at all. I thought Jeremy found the I don't know, what would you call it, Tim. the ripped up, I'm thinking of Jeremy and all these names.
I read it as if the raccoons had killed the cat.
That's what I
also, but I'd love it if he killed the cat. If he killed the cat.
I don't think he killed the cat. He
I have to
doesn't.
tell you though, so two quick things. I love the way that Kathy led up to this too, because it's that moment where Lauren, like, I can only imagine what Lauren must have felt like when she realized that Prufrock, the cat that she loved, is what she left behind, right? Like, and then
she's the excellent packer and forget of all of her things.
Right, and Jeremy's like, you can be guaranteed she'll be a shitty mother, right? The finals, that last move starts with Lauren was apoplectic when we left to get the cat, right? So for me, if we look at the penultimate part of the story, right? It's if I'm reading it right, and maybe I don't know, maybe I'm just a dark person, but there's something about like Jeremy goes into the room, there's like 3 bumps and a screech, and then he comes out, and then our narrator says, please tell me that's a raccoon.
Right.
Like, what?
Yeah, he
like
kills.
I had to reread that twice.
Yeah.
I heard 2 loud thumps and a screech, and then there he was, holding something in both hands in front of him. Right? Like, what?
Well,
like, what
Maybe
just
by
happened?
mistake.
Can I?
Do you think he could have killed it by mistake?
I have a big
Maybe.
reality check on this, a big reality check. If a cat has been trapped in the house with the raccoons, that cat is not going to be in an obvious place. Jeremy's not going to be able to walk in the room and kill him with his bare hands in 5 seconds. That cat is hiding somewhere. That cat's in a dresser drawer if it's not dead. Right? He's not going to walk in a dark room and find that cat that fast and kill it.
Yeah.
I took it that the cat was defending the family because of the last sentence. I imagine Prufrock trying to fend off the attack, and I can't imagine or get my hands around what I'm capable of, because isn't that the point, that Prufrock was the one who is trying to defend this house from all of the raccoons, and he dies.
I don't know. Accidentally or otherwise, the plot reads as if the kid has killed the cat.
Well, not
Right?
for
Like,
everyone, though.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, until you said it, all 4 of us did not think that.
Yeah.
Right? And now once you've planted our heads, we're trying to find the textual evidence either way. But again, I would just repeat myself. I didn't see him for half a minute. For half a minute. In 30 seconds, he finds a cat and kills it. I don't think so. So...
That needs to be cleared up. It could be the raccoon that's screeching and running away. Mm-hmm. And that the raccoon had killed the cat, and now he's just picking it up and holding him out.
That's true, Tim. That's true. Right.
I still don't think the cat would let the raccoon kill him. The cat would get away. Cats are hard to catch.
Well, and again, and then the likelihood that the drama of the cat being killed by a raccoon while they're standing there also slim, right? But it's 2 loud thumps and a screech, and then there he was. Right?
Yeah.
So timing wire or what else? Something has happened. Either the raccoon kills the cat or the kid kills the cat, mistakenly or otherwise. 2 loud thumps and a screech, and then he's holding the raccoon. And you know what? It's so funny. I just got finished watching the ESPN OJ series, and I realized, like, as we were talking about this, we were reading the textual evidence for evidence of what this crime, you know what I mean? Like, what happened here? Like, we only have pieces of information that are coming through, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like both like a delight and also kind of frustrating not to have a clearer sense of this moment. Right? Like, so that is both a strength and a weakness of the piece for me. Like, I'm like,
Right.
What just happened? And then it ends so quickly with that little denouement.
Right. And I had no question. So that I don't have the second half of it. Like, what? I don't have the what. I thought I got it, you know. The two thumbs are just, and definitely screech is a sound for a raccoon, in my mind, right? So two thumbs, you know, they are big, lumberous kind of bodies on the raccoons. I just thought that the raccoons were scurrying away, and the screech was one of the raccoons, still trying to defend the prey he just killed.
Maybe. Yeah.
You know?
For me, Prufrock doesn't have to die in the story. For me, if the raccoons just haven't been caught by the traps, that elevates the problem significantly. If the traps don't work, how are they going to get the raccoons? This is a huge problem that he's not going to take care of, and it's easier for this guy to just walk out on the marriage than to fix the raccoon problem. To me, that's the story.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to be about Prufrock because I don't care that much about Prufrock. I mean, I just don't care
About the cat?
about the cat that much. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to see the. I
You don't
I
know
just don't
that
feel
cat.
anything. Yeah, I just have no connection to it. But
Sure.
I do feel a connection towards everything else in the story. The parents.
But
I mean,
can you guys,
What's that?
Tim, can you just deal with that very last move then? Like, why does he drive away? Why does he just drive away? Like,
I don't know. The
Yeah,
last
like-
11 lines. I
Yeah.
mean, as much as I love everything about the story up until the last 11 lines, I just am not into at all.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that happens all the time when I'm writing a story. A friend of mine that I show my work to will tell me, "Yeah, everything's great, but the last page sucks. Just redo it." And
Exactly.
so you got to stick the landing, and sometimes it takes 5 or 10 times, and then you stick it.
Yeah, it's always the ending where people cop out or
Yeah.
tank out, right? Now, I'm not saying I felt that way about this one, but I'm saying endings are hard,
Yeah.
and I wasn't hugely satisfied by this ending, but yet, you know, we sometimes talk about forgiveness when we're reading work. Like, the rest of the piece is so good for me. These characters are so real and so well drawn, and everyone but I guess mother-in-law is multidimensional. I wasn't thrilled with that ending, but I'm willing to forgive it based on everything else that happened. And, you know, and my kind of corny read is, you know, the protagonist is Prufrock. He can't do anything right. He just keeps kind of blundering along, and getting in the car and driving away with Jeremy is, you know, another move. He hasn't changed. This
He makes
episode,
no decision. He
Yeah.
never makes any decision or even an opinion, kind of like you were saying, they're good people, but they're terrible people. He's caught in his indecision all the time.
Yeah.
Even with the, I forget his name now, the exterminator.
Jake.
He kind of calls out and feels like he needs to parent Jeremy, like sees the obvious lack of strength or
Yeah. Well, that's another Jake moment. There's a lot of lovely humor in here. I don't know if this is a bad segue at this moment, but I definitely chuckled aloud, I think, quite a few times. And one of the times is when Jake says to the protagonist, hey, let's hope we both get laid tonight. Like, and it's out of nowhere whatsoever. And then he notices Jeremy the teenager, because it's the first time Jeremy the teenager does or says anything, and he laughs at this. And then Jake changes completely and is like, stay in school, stay off drugs, keep your pecker in your pants.
well, he is
Right?
He is so in charge. He is like the polar opposite. He is in charge of everything. He's going to kill those raccoons. He's going to parent that son. He's going to get laid.
Right.
He's going to scratch his
Right.
balls until they pay him. Like, that's what he's going to do.
He's like that
He
alpha
knows
male.
what he's going to
Right.
do.
Yeah.
So he's a cartoonish alpha male in juxtaposition to the protagonist, right?
beta male, yeah.
Jeremy says, yes, sir. And Dad has never heard him say sir before, right?
Yeah.
Right,
And I just loved that the advice was the exact opposite. He said, I hope we get laid. And then he goes, keep your pecker in your pocket. So he knew, Jake did know how to handle a kid, right? Yeah. There's a lot of chuckle moments, I think. There are moments where we chuckle.
I think he also sort of parents the protagonist when he says, it'll be all right, sport. I'll kill those bastards and leave you the carcasses to piss on. I mean, he's going to kill the raccoons, but it doesn't mean he's going to deal with them after that. He's just
Yeah.
going to kill them, and then that's it, and he still has to take some sort of responsibility for the situation.
Yeah. Right. So, like, I guess that for me too is part of the charm of the story. It's like all of these different kinds of masculinities getting played out here, right?
Yeah.
To more or less comic effect, right? And I also think, like, again, that the ending, just to draw us back there for a moment, like, there's such a sense of, like, fatherly protection, right?
Yeah.
Like, driving away with Jeremy. I mean, if you follow the emotional logic through, he's in this terrible, like, situation with his wife. She's the one who forgot the cat. The cat dies, right? Why would he not go back to let her know this and instead choose to drive off? There's, like, some impulse to separate. Is it totally passive, or is he protecting Jeremy? Like, it's not clear. It's interesting, but it just feels a little bit underdeveloped for me when there's so much else going on beautifully in the story.
Yeah, and it's funny that you would say that on developed part, because even though this protagonist is not this, like, strong hero, I would like to spend more time with this family. I really would. I think they're really rich. Think about, I mean, this is 13 pages, so that's not a short story, but I think a lot happens in 13 pages. Yeah. And I think, Mayor, from the beginning, that his first insults directed at Lauren are her wanting to play stepmom, and Jeremy is mine. You know, and that attitude doesn't stop. You know, when Jeremy tells him he wants to join the Navy SEALs, he's like, give me 2 years to talk you out of it.
Right, he says at the end, too, the raccoons can have the house, but Lauren doesn't get to keep the baby for herself, and neither the SEALs nor his mother get to take Jeremy from me.
Yeah.
It's like his claim.
Yeah.
Right.
On also the new baby.
I feel like this is a great story. If there was a class on fatherhood, people could just read this and talk about which areas this guy's failing, because sometimes I think it's not so clear to men. You get caught up in a moment and you think, well, what's the right or wrong situation? So what? Yeah. And then when you look at it from this, you think, oh yeah, there's like 10 or 15 moments that are totally I mean, for me, the marriage is totally fixable here. He can fix it if he just handles 4 or 5 of these problems, but he's just gonna cop out at every critical moment.
Yeah. Denise, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
What am I thinking?
We should open up parenting classes, parenting through fiction. Right?
We could do that.
And we use this story in Audrey Debus's A Father Story to teach about fathering.
Yes. That's my favorite.
I'm so excited. This is happening. Counseling Center, parenting through fiction.
Well, you know what? I have a colleague at NYU, Abu Dhabi, who's putting a course together for a first-year writing seminar, and he wants to call it Generations, but it really is about masculinity and fathering. So, and it's also chiming with him becoming a new father himself, and it's really quite lovely to see how he's, like, using his life experience in a first-year writing class.
We are going to have him Skype in a guest lecture at our counseling center in Collingswood.
Well, I do think this is.
Yes, we will.
I mean, this is one of the things I try to tell my students in all of my classes when we read short stories is you can either learn the hard lessons in life through stories, or you can live it. It's so much easier just to read the story and figure out what losers these people are than figure it out, than do it the hard way. And I think that's one of the maybe one of the top 5 functions of literature is to guide a culture. And I think that's one thing we're losing in our culture right now, with maybe the lack of stories that we're reading in classes or in the curriculum. And a lot of schools where I teach around town, we're just teaching people how to write, but not necessarily teaching them how to read. Because this story really made me think, like not thinking as a reader or writer or teacher or anything, just like, oh my God, am I like this? And it's a great moment to have when you're reading a story. So you can just tweak those little things before anybody finds out.
I'm going to go back to that minutia question. I think we might be ready to vote. We can certainly talk a little bit longer, but if we're ready to vote, I would like to vote with the bit of the caveat that there might be a line or two here or there. There might be a couple requests to the author. So we could vote knowing that edits are still allowed. Does that sound right? Do you guys want to keep talking about this piece in particular?
I think we're.
I feel like we
there.
could keep talking, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we're there.
Could keep going on.
You feel good, Mare, about voting?
Yeah, let's vote. I think we're ready.
Okay. All right. Joe, you ready? All right. 1, 2, 3, vote. We're waiting for New York. I'm not going to reveal who's where and what, but it's in. Yay, Terry Dubow. Terry Dubow's Prufrock will be in an upcoming issue of PBQ. I'm very, very excited. So our first piece of fiction got in, and I really wasn't sure if it would or not. So that's always a fun time. So I'm not sure now, and I'm going to ask Marion to make a decision with me during this recording, which is our plan was to talk about the second no that we've received out of maybe 30 requests to be on this podcast, and try to see if we can just, hypothetically, we won't really get to the bottom of it, but hypothetically get to the bottom of it. So we could discuss that, which was the plan, or the new idea would be to discuss fiction on a podcast and liken it to film review podcasts, TV synopsis podcasts. Are people listening to them instead of watching? A little of both. What do we do? What are our habits? And that kind of thing. What do you guys?
I like the second topic because it really does give us a minute to just reflect on what we just did.
Yeah.
And think about how people are listening to podcasts, right?
Sure.
And why. So I think that's a great topic.
Okay. Yeah, it's more related to what we're doing right now.
Yeah,
we can save that other one will last. That other one has a shelf life. So
Yeah.
So while we were talking before we got on air, I'm very much a podcast addict. I know some people aren't. And I make various decisions based on if the example I used earlier is Pop Culture Happy Hour is one of my favorite podcasts, and they will put, right in the notes, right even what you see on your phone, what they're going to be talking about. If they're going to be talking about something that I intend to watch, I skip that podcast until I watch whatever that is. If they're talking about something I have no intention of ever watching, but I know it's happening in the pop culture, I will listen so that I know about this thing that everybody's talking about, right? And Marion, you were saying earlier, do you have friends who do what?
Yeah, so I met up with some friends, some colleagues from NYU. We had brunch the other day, and we were just comparing notes about the podcasts we listened to. And some of them were saying that they actually enjoy the recap shows in both podcasts or even sort of YouTube video recap shows for television series like Game of Thrones, for instance, that the recap shows are somehow more satisfying than the appointment television or the watching of the primary text, which I just think is super, super cool and interesting. So for instance, Downton Abbey, right? There was a great podcast by one of the people who had been on the Slate Culture Gabfest, and her name escapes me. But she ran this recap podcast for Downton Abbey, and people were listening to that rather than watching the show anymore because they thought the show was kind of tedious. Right? And I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. That's an approach, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it might be so show specific, right?
Yeah.
Downton Abbey in particular, my joke about Downton Abbey that it doesn't matter if I fall asleep while I'm watching it, and I can just watch the next episode and it won't even, little ever happens.
Right.
So what are other thoughts on this phenom?
I really do the same thing. If I haven't seen, a music video or something like that really adds up to something important in pop culture, then I'll definitely just look up YouTube videos or articles about it. I know with Lemonade by Beyonce, I never saw it because I had never downloaded Tidal, and I just never got around to it. But I, watched all the YouTube reviews of it and read all of the reviews of it. So I feel like I saw it, even though I didn't actually see it.
Yeah, you know what? That actually came up in one of our podcast ones, Beyonce's Lemonade, because of that, because it becomes a part of your psyche and your, our culture, even if you don't experience it. You can't avoid certain things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I say too, like the spirit of the Slush Pile podcast, right, is to what's the phrase we use? Like we're pulling back the veil on the editorial process,
Right.
So that's our motive for it. But like now I'm thinking, well, what's an audience member's motive for a show like this, right? Yeah, to listen to editorial like discussion, but like, is it also a kind of gatekeeping? Is it also a kind of like a vetting of the material so that the show is saying like, okay, this piece is worth reading, this piece is not worth reading. So now I may go back to the show notes or the publication to read it, or you know what I mean? Like, So what is the logic of a podcast like this, or critical review podcast? Is it a kind of gatekeeping? Is it a kind of review? Is it a recap, right? Like, and I think, the recap show is completely different than what we're doing,
Right.
So what is it? How does this thinking about the audience help refine what we're doing, especially for fiction? Like, it just feels different for fiction than it does poetry.
Well, we can't drill down to the line by line in the way that we do with poems, right? And maybe, our original intent was simply what you said. Pull back the veil, let people see that the moment between when they send a work out and acceptance or rejection.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a behind the scenes podcast, right? Are there other behind the scenes ideas out there? That's right. It's the making of. It's the making of PBQ.
Right.
Right.
It's definitely educational too. I feel like it's a resource for people who might submit to PBQ, for writers in general. For me, it's been an educational experience just knowing the process of submitting to literary magazines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and I'm super curious too to like, all right, so Terry Dubow is going to listen to this podcast. We've just spent an hour talking about his piece. It's accepted, right? And it's going to be in PBQ. But I do wonder what the experience is like for him, right? Like,
I really wonder
how
that
is-
too, actually.
Like, how is he going to take it in?
I want to ask him to clear up our questions, or
well, we
I
can.
wanna know.
We can absolutely do that. But I spoke with him to, clarify what it meant to be on the podcast. He had some questions, and one of the questions was, "Why did you choose this piece? Why? And I thought that was really fascinating, and and he knew, he was fully on board that it could be rejected just as easily, and he listened. I did want to tell you guys this for all of our listeners as well. He just picked a random podcast and he listened to episode 7, which I like to fondly call the Coyote episode.
Oh, I love that.
And I was like, of all episodes to listen to, you picked a good one randomly, right? So, we are getting response back to the people whose work, from the people whose work we discussed. Obviously, they've all been poets, but everyone has been going into this terrorized and thrilled, like riding a roller coaster, even though they're afraid of it. And, we've had people say that they've responded very emotionally, that they cried, but people are using, but not because we were so mean, because what they had written about was so personal and emotional and evocative. But all of the feedback, even from people who have rejected, has been, that was fascinating.
Here's my question to Terry Dubow. Terry Dubow,
Yeah.
who killed the cat? or are we supposed to wonder? If
Right.
am I left to wonder, and I'm okay with either answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can certainly ask him. But that doesn't mean we're going to publish it or make it public in any way. So, all of our readers, in fact, that would be a great, maybe it could go viral, the debate online.
Who killed?
Who killed Prufrock?
That's how I'll market this podcast.
Who killed Prufrock? So every one of our episodes does have a corresponding Facebook event page, and that's where you can give us that feedback. Read the piece and tell us who killed Prufrock, and we'll see what happens. That'll be fun.
Great.
Yeah, so I guess we should wrap up now. I guess that's it for today. So episode 12, a successful fiction conversation, I would call it that. And I would say, please listen. We come out every other week. We have free stickers for you if you send us a self-addressed stamped envelope. Always, pbq.drexel.edu is where you can get both these podcasts and their corresponding pages. And you can subscribe to this podcast anywhere you'd like. And please review us and share it once you fall in love. So, and keep writing. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
This podcast is produced through a joint venture of Drexel University's Office of Information Resources and Technology and the Painted Bride Quarterly magazine. This podcast is the property of Painted Bride Quarterly magazine. All rights reserved.